Good evening, councillors, staff. I declare the Policy Review Committee meeting open at 6:08 p.m. Apologies for the technical difficulty to start. This meeting today is being held on Wajak Noongar Budja, and I would like to acknowledge and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. I thank all past and present members of the community that have supported the city to better understand and value Noongar culture within the city of Wanneroo. I invite you to bow your heads in prayer. Lord, we thank you for blessing our city, our community and our council. Guide us to act fairly, without fear or favour, and with compassion, integrity, wisdom and honesty. May we show true leadership, be inclusive of all, and guide all of the city's people and many families to a prosperous future that all may share. We ask that in your name. Amen. Announcements. Live stream announcement. Please note that the audio-visual proceedings of tonight's meeting will be live broadcast online, with the exception of matters discussed behind closed doors. The broadcast of the proceedings of the meeting can be accessed live and on demand through the City of Wanneroo YouTube channel. Item 1, attendances. We have received an electronic attendance from Councillor Herridge. As is required under the electronic attendance policy, as it was a late attendance request submitted, it requires approval by Mayor Aitken. So, Mayor, I'll just ask now if you can approve that request.
Let the record show that I give authority for Councillor Herridge to have electronic attendance for this meeting this evening. She sent her application in because of an unexpected situation at 10:26 this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I now ask if Council Services can please admit Councillor Herridge to the meeting proper, and I will ask her to read her declaration. Councillors, I'm going to keep going with the meeting proper, and then when Councillor Herridge is able to join us, we will allow her to make her declaration. Item 2, apologies and leave of absence. We note that Councillor Moore is on parental leave, and we have received an apology from Councillor Parker. I ask the administration, have any other apologies been received at this time? No, none to note. Item 3, confirmation of minutes. That the minutes of the Policy Review Committee meeting held on the 7th of April 2025 be confirmed as a true and accurate record. Can I please seek a mover and a seconder for the adoption of those minutes? Moved Councillor Wright, seconded Councillor Miles. Are there any corrections that need to be made to those minutes? No indication. So I believe we are doing electronic voting this evening. Can we just cast votes when it appears on our screen to adopt the minutes? And I declare that carried unanimously by everyone in the room. I will make the point that we currently have 9 councillors here, which is sufficient to proceed with quorum. Okay. That takes us to reports. Council members, I sent through a message to you all late this afternoon, just flagging an intention to move a number of items en bloc through a procedural motion. I just want to ask from the list that I'm about to read if there are any that you would like to bring out to deal with as a standalone item. I appreciate that limited notice was provided, so I'm just going to read them slowly. 4.3, Local Planning Policy 412, Heritage Places. 4.4, WLCC Deductible Gift Recipient Status Policy. 4.6, Closed Circuit Television, CCTV and Video Surveillance Devices Management Policy. 4.7, Joint Development and Shared Use Facilities with the Department of Education Policy. 4.9, Council Policy Framework Policy. And 4.11, Execution of Documents Policy. From the councillors who are present in the room, do you wish to deal with any of those items individually? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I did send an email to the administration on Thursday last week with some questions. I didn't receive any responses to any of those from any director. I was just seeking a clarification to those before we do that en bloc.
Ms Coles can answer the question on the execution of documents policy.
Thank you, Councillor Wright, for your question. So your question related to the city amending the for leases from 5 years to 10 years. So that's to align with the delegation, which is Delegation 1.1.20. So that allows the administration to dispose of property by lease or licence for a period up to 10 years. That's to the CEO and to the manager, to the director and the manager. So the policy as it currently stands is conflicts with the delegation. So it's just to align to that.
Councillor Wright, perhaps you could refresh our memory the other items that your question's related to.
Yeah, I think they primarily sit within the Community and Place Directorate. There was just a few policies around reference to management procedures. There was, they were mainly typos and those sorts of nature. There wasn't anything dramatic or content-wise changes. So, like for example, in the facility and hire use policy, there were some review dates that were missing. There was some reference to management procedures. And then there was a couple of questions around taking off the Banksia Room and Jacaranda Court from hire. There was a couple of those things.
I think one of the questions in the comments relates to 4.1, which will be workshopped anyway, so that's not being set out. Ms Callan, I'll give you the opportunity if you want to respond.
Thanks, and through the chair, thank you, Councillor Wright, for your question. I do have those answers before me, and they will be in your inboxes very shortly. Thank you.
Okay. Therefore, was there any issue with Councillor Miles?
Yes, sorry, Deputy Mayor, can you just repeat the numbers that you want to move on block, please?
Sure. 4.3, Local Planning Policy 412, Heritage Places. 4.4, 4.6, 4.7, 4.9, 4.11. So the request is being put forward in the interests of time, noting that they're all simple majority decisions and no alternative or amendment has been flagged on those items at this stage. However, it's obviously at the discretion of the group. So if there's a particular item you'd feel the need to deal with individually, more than happy to do so.
So did you want to just move those now and clear them off? Yep, I'm happy to second or move that.
So that'll be moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Miles. As it is a procedural motion to move on block, there is no debate on such a motion. So therefore, I will ask council members to cast their vote on an en bloc procedural motion when it appears on the screen. I declare that carried unanimously by councillors in the room. Excellent. So we're going to return to the agenda proper. And prior to us getting to item 4.1, you'll note, council members, that the agenda this evening is broken into two main sections. The first two items are for workshopping purposes and the rest are reports with recommendations that we will be voting on. In the interest of being able to have good discussion and not feel limited in how many times we can speak, what I'm going to propose is a procedural motion at this stage to suspend Standing Order 5.8, limitation on members' speaking time. It just means when we get into the workshop items that you'll be able to speak more than once on the item, because they are more conducive to good-natured discussion where you're not limited by the standing orders. So I'm going to move that procedural motion to suspend Standing Order 5.8, limitation on members' speaking time. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Wright. Okay. So can we have a vote, please, on that second procedural motion? Who am I missing? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. So item 4.1, workshop facility hire and use policy. The responsible officer is Ms Callan. However, prior to going to her two introductory remarks and to introduce the consultant, the CEO wishes to make a comment.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just for the purposes of being open and transparent, the consultant tonight and I have known each other for over 20 years. We first worked at the City of Albany together back in about 2001, 2002, where we both started our careers. So I haven't been involved in any procurement decisions in terms of his coming on board. Happens in the Community Place Directorate, nor have I had any involvement in the project to date. Just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr CEO, and we acknowledge the presence of the consultant and Mr Clem, but if I first go to Ms Callan, if there are any introductory remarks you wish to make.
Through the chair, not particularly. Just to hand over to Rowan and Mark to take us through the workshop for the facility hire and use policy. Thank you.
I'll just go to Councillor Miles first.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just my question is obviously this has been reviewed. In the report, it doesn't say what is being reviewed. Can administration just briefly say what the consultant was doing, whether it was a complete review, whether we're doing it wrong, or whether it was just a targeted area of the policy?
And I'll go to Mr Clem, and perhaps if there's any other introductory remarks you want to make to the report before we get into more substantive discussion. Mr Clem.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and good evening, council members. To answer Councillor Miles's question, this is a major review of the policy that we're undertaking. So the whole policy is up for consideration and feedback. I'll keep going, Deputy Mayor, if you're okay with that. Thank you. Councillors, you may recall we had a discussion about the facility hire and use policy at our concept forum back in November last year, and some feedback we received at the time was to line up the review of this policy with the community facilities service review, which has commenced. So that service review is underway now, and the review of our facility hire and use policy is running concurrently with that. The intent of tonight's workshop is to get feedback from council on the updated draft policy, which you've got a copy of in the report tonight. Prior to undertaking external consultation, we have, in commencing the review of this policy, engaged an external consultant, and we have Mark Weller from Ascentive Consulting here with us tonight. And Mark's going to take you through initially a bit of a summary of the process that we've undertaken so far, and then we would like to open it up for council members to provide their feedback on the updated draft policy. Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Mark, we give you the opportunity now to speak to the group.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. Deputy Mayor, councillors, staff and community. My name's Mark Weller of Ascentive Consulting. I'd like to invite you to have a look at our website if you want to see our bona fides in this work. Majority of our team have a background in local government and we work all around Western Australia. I really appreciate working with you and love what we're doing. So today we're looking at reviewing the facility hire and use policy. There'll also be a review of the management procedure and the facility hire and use guidelines. They're associated with that, but won't go to council. The aim of the review is to ensure that the policy meets council objectives, being ensure the community facilities are used in a manner that aligns with the city's priorities and provides benefit for the community, outline principles of hire and use which allow an appropriate return for the city, define categories of facility use to ensure appropriate activation of facilities. The process has involved so far initial review to identify potential improvements. We just do that from our team's experience in local government. Workshop with facilities and operations team and further updates. Your team really know what they're doing in this regard. A policy review committee workshop, which is now. Then go to wider community consultation and then you'll receive a updated policy, another session like this, and then consideration for adoption. The potential key changes we've identified so far is a clarification of concession rates with concession percentages related back to adult use as specified in the city's annual fees and charges, expanding detail regarding maximising usage, diversity of use and activation to support community use facilities, prioritisation of local residents, groups and organisations over and above those located in other local government areas, consistency with the policy, within policy developed at the city, use of national standardised wording and concession details, and key definitions that are consistent across all related documentation. A general comment that I've got is one of the outcomes of the review we'd like to achieve is that no one is worse off, so no one is disadvantaged. Obviously, when you've got a large policy review, there's no guarantee in that regard, but particularly when it comes to financial and usage, that everyone in your community is either the same or better off. But also, what we're hoping to achieve is a reduction in administration time by reducing complexity. And all that does is if you can save some FTE, then you can use that in other areas to benefit your community. So, but you can be the judge of that. So far, we've our intention is, I've already mentioned that, we've received feedback from 4 councils. We put a survey out. We'll make sure that survey is open again, so if you'd like to provide additional feedback on that, we'd welcome that. We have had a look at the current feedback from council. It's really good. There's a lot of, I guess, what do we call them, procedural matters? So, yeah, and I think we've only got a limited time, so I wouldn't go through all of that feedback now, but just wanted to let you know that if you did provide that feedback, it's been given due regard, and those changes will be looked at in the next version of the policy. What we'd like to ask council, we're seeking some feedback tonight, bearing in mind this is it's a facilitated workshop session, so a little bit less formal, just allow you to have some discussion and comment in relation to the principles in the policy and the concessions. Are you comfortable with the principles as captured in the policy? Are you comfortable with the concessions captured in the policy? And do you have any feedback you'd like to provide to us ahead of this going to some community engagement?
Thank you very much, and much similar to the second item, there's no recommendation at the end of the report, so we're not voting on anything. It's the opportunity for feedback, questions, comments. So thank you very much for the presentation. I open the floor for discussion. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I just had 2 questions. One was on, I'll try and get the page numbers right. So I think it's page 8 of the clean version that you guys presented to us, and page 33 for councillors. It was just in Annexure 1, and you've got in there the method of calculation for the concessionary rate. Obviously, it refers to a management procedure. Is there any way that that can be transparently explained to the community around how those concession rates are calculated?
Mr. Clem, or?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, and thanks for the question, Councillor Wright. What we can give consideration to is whether we can include that in some public-facing guidelines that would provide that further information to the community, as opposed to our management procedures, which are obviously internal and are not public-facing. The alternative, I guess, is that we could consider including it in the policy, and I'm not sure if that's preferable for council, but there's some feedback we could take on board.
Councillor Wright.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The only reason why I say that is because I guess when community do contact us, to be able to refer them to 4 or 5 different sets of documents, considering that sometimes this is sort of the go-to place, and I know we don't really try and get as prescriptive in this, but because particularly this policy gets well used by the community, I think just having, even if it was a simple diagram or something around the methodology of how the admin sort of, how that sort of fits in, so they can have some sort of awareness around how much they are going to pay, because I guess I'm a bit hesitant of referring them to another document and another document. Like if there's something that can just be a last page or something in terms of the actual calculation and how that works out based on members that live in the city of Wanneroo, whatever it is, I'm not sure. Just some feedback from us in terms of some of the community groups. I guess that's a statement. The second question was, and it was actually from a not-for-profit, I shouldn't say not-for-profit, another organisation I'm actually a part of, and apparently there's been some changes with the city that groups can no longer rent the Banksia Room and Jacaranda Court out now. So I believe we were told that it's now only for internal use, or any clubs or organisations such as the Bushfire Brigades that can now use the Banksia and Jacaranda Court. So is that now the case where other groups can no longer hire this space?
So we'll give Mr Clem the opportunity to respond, and then we'll allow Councillor Herridge, who has joined us, to make a declaration. We'll be with you in a couple of minutes. Nat, we'll just go to Mr Clem first.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Wright. We have some challenges with the hire of the Banksia Groove to external groups because of the manner in which catering and other arrangements need to happen within that space, and being part of our civic building around, I guess, security and other things like that. So we have paused the external hiring of the Banksia Room while we review that those particular challenges and see which of those are solvable relatively easily and which ones perhaps aren't, and then we would be making a decision, I guess, more of a permanent decision on the hire of the Banksia Room after that.
Okay, we'll go back to you, Councillor. I'm just going to pause there to let Councillor Herridge know that we have moved a number of items on block. So at this stage we've returned to the agenda proper. We've suspended Standing Order 5.8 to allow people multiple times to speak. We're on 4.1, the workshop of the facility hire and use policy. So I might just pause there and ask if you can read your declaration now that you've been allowed into the meeting.
Yep, sure can. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. In accordance with Section 14CA5, I, Nat Herridge, declare that I can maintain confidentiality whilst attending the closed part of this council meeting electronically.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. And any questions that you had or comments on the matters that were dealt with on block, we will ensure that you're provided with a response to those particular items, okay? Councillor Wright, back to you. Further question.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just one supplementary on that. I guess that also impacts our revenue stream as well for some of these bookable spaces if we're having to take them offline. Do we have is this the final exemption list that's been provided in Annexure 2, or is there further facilities that have also the same issues that we're now needing to review, any additional spaces that may have other challenges?
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. No, that's the final draft list of exclusions. We're not proposing to add any more to that.
Further questions, council members? Yes, Mark.
If I may respond, Councillor Wright, I just wanted to pick up, you said about having a simple diagram in relation to concession rates. I think there are some limitations in the policy format. We're limited to your template. However, I think it's really important if the community has key issues that you get perhaps frequently asked questions, that those are captured in your guidelines. So that's probably where I'd put it. And I think what would be really great from council if you respond to the survey or by other means let us know what are the key issues, because they can be the ones that get picked up in there. And I can see a diagram of calculation of concession rates is a good idea. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. In regards to the consultation part, I was just wondering, so it mentions that we're going to email directly the facility user database to capture the current facility users from the previous 12 months. Is it possible that for any of those groups that are kind of identified to be more elderly to be sent a physical mail as well to capture them in case that they don't check their emails regularly or anything like that? Is that possible?
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Certainly we can look at some alternative means of contacting those groups. Our user database, by and large, is best way to explain it. I think the majority of our groups within our facility user database do have email contact because that's the predominant way which we do communicate with the vast majority of them. But we will look to pick up those that aren't using email or would prefer another means.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Yeah, I realise that they're probably using the booking system and emails, but just in case they weren't frequently on there. In terms of could we have some visual poster signage at the venues as well? Would that be possible? Just as an extra thing, because I think that's always a good one to have when people are going in and out to remind them. Thank you.
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Yes, we can do that.
Councillor Smith.
Next question's in relation to the new self-help and peer support group that's included in the definitions. I'm not sure if I missed it, but I didn't see it mentioned in the actual rest of the policy. And I think this new group is to hopefully address, I think, one of the issues that one of the groups Befriend had in terms of being a group that's helpful but maybe not a non-profit status or something like that. Is this a solution to that problem in that sense, or I'm just trying to understand if that's how it's been captured? And thank you.
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Smith. I might ask Ms Fennell if she knows the answer to that question, and if not, we can take that on notice and let you know.
Ms Fennell.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, and thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think we might have to take that one on notice and consult with the consultant directly on that one, unless you can add anything, Mark.
I think we need to look into that a bit, JP. Yep.
Yeah. But my understanding, it is very much related to the Befriend groups who are auspiced by another group at their own organisation, but technically they're eligible but can't receive concession. So it's about tidying up those aspects, yes.
Noted. Councillor Smith.
I just have emails from them from before, so if that would be helpful for me to forward on again, because I know I have. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Miles.
Yeah, just a quick one, Deputy Mayor. On page 36, the excluded facilities that this policy excludes, Mr Clem, is it possible then to put alongside those, because this will be published information, what area of the council that they would need to book those particular venues through? So if somebody wants to book Wanneroo AccuMotion, I'm assuming they need to go to AccuMotion. If somebody wants to book Buckingham House, then there must be another part of council that they can book that facility from. So we should be making it easy for people to know where to go within the organisation.
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. The list of excluded facilities relates to their exclusion from the elements of the policy. I don't think we'd include in the policy where someone may need to go to book those facilities, but the details of that are available on the city's website. If they're not, we'll make sure the city's website is updated to reflect that.
Further comments or questions on this item? Just perhaps one from myself. I did complete the survey, but then I thought of something afterwards and I thought I'll share that feedback, given it relates to facility hire. I'm not sure it'll be something captured in a policy or the management procedure, but it's around an example of storage, whereby a user group is not able to access permanent storage at a facility, even though they become the main user group, because an existing group, even if they're on reduced bookings or no longer use the facility at all, have access to the site, and the city doesn't remove their equipment or their resources, even though they're no longer paying to use the facility. So I might ask Mr Clem, if I can, if that is something that could be captured in this policy, or if it would be more so through a management procedure.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. It's not something we would capture in the policy. There's no, I guess, guarantee of storage in any city facility, but it is something we can address through a management procedure, and perhaps through something like our FAQs on our website as well.
And I think then in just making the contribution, I do see Councillor Herridge, you've got a question. I'll go to you in just a second. Providing the feedback, what I'd ask the city to reflect on is if a user group is paying for the use of a facility and they don't have access to sufficient or any storage, but a user group who used to pay for the privilege of a facility still has their equipment in storage. I just think from an equity perspective, even if it's not captured in the policy, I think the administration would understand the challenges that a group would experience. And I know Mr Clem knows who I'm talking about, a particular football club in Girraween, but that's where I'm coming from, if that can be taken on board, if not through the policy, through some other reflection.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Yes, we can certainly take that on and consider how we can cover information around storage that wouldn't be included in the policy but would be available for the community to find out.
Thank you, Mr Clem. Councillor Herridge, question from yourself.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I did provide some feedback through on the survey. So has that been taken into consideration, or do I need to resend or ask those again?
Mark?
Yeah, we certainly received the feedback from all councillors that provided that. We haven't made any updates yet. Our intention was to consider that at the same time as feedback from this session. The other thing I'd add about storage is it's probably an aside, but it's an issue which comes across a lot of sporting groups that don't have a club room, but it is actually, if you're considering some of your capital projects, a good one to have a look at, which is potentially having shared administration and storage facilities for multi-use for clubs that need that, something that a lot of councillors are looking at. I'll go back and see if Councillor Herridge has a follow-up, but I'll make the point that I know in the past user groups that have requested and want to make contribution towards the purchase or hire of a storage unit or a sea container have been told that they're not allowed to due to constraints of the site. So I think there are some issues in what our policy allows versus what's considered feasible, but storage, I know, is a universal issue across the board for the different user groups. Councillor Herridge, sorry I cut in on you. Did you have any supplementary?
No, all good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions on this item being 4.1? None indicated. So at that point, we will close that item. We thank you very much for attending, and we will progress on to 4.2, also a workshop item, Local Planning Policy 4.3, Public Open Space. We'll give the administration time to assume the desk if they want to come up to face the line of questioning. Okay. This item, beginning on page 37 of the agenda proper, sits within the Planning and Sustainability Directorate. So I'll go to Mr Piggott first as the Acting Director if there are any introductory comments you wish to make. I will note at this stage that you sent around an email this afternoon that provided some additional information on anticipated questions, and I did ask for that to be printed and added to our folders, which it has been. Oh, and there's some slides, I believe. Okay. Therefore, Mr Piggott and staff, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rowe, and good evening, council members. In relation to item 4.2, the Planning and Sustainability Directorate wishes to facilitate a workshop on Local Planning Policy 4.3, Public Open Space, in response to a motion on notice at the ordinary council meeting on 27th of May 2025. I welcome Acting Manager Strategic Land Use and Environment Mandy Pearce, who will be presenting this report and a 5-minute presentation to you, and Manager Land Development Craig Wansborough, who may answer questions and provide clarity on topics to be discussed tonight. With your support, Deputy Mayor, I'll hand over to Mrs Pearce, noting that following input on the policy from council members, administration will prepare a revised draft of LPP 4.3 based on the feedback received and present it to an upcoming policy review committee for approval to advertise. Thank you.
Ms Pearce, please begin your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and council members. I'd like to introduce item 4.2, which is a workshop to discuss Local Planning Policy 4.3, Public Open Space. As Matt mentioned, this item is in response to a motion on notice received at the 27th of May Ordinary Council meeting that highlighted some matters for administration to consider in the review of LPP 4.3, including the level of equipment provided in the policy Schedule 3 and the landscaping of parks. In this presentation, I will show you some examples of different levels of public open space in the city to trigger your thoughts about aspects of POS that you like and would like to see more of, and of those that you don't prefer. I'll then discuss the policy generally before seeking your feedback on matters that you would like administration to consider in review of the policy. And if we could go to the next slide, please. So I'll start by showing you some examples of pocket parks. Pocket parks are the city's smallest parks and are generally less than 5,000 square metres and are intended to serve an amenity and recreation function. Pocket parks can also exist to retain portions of significant vegetation or cultural and physical landmarks. In accordance with our policy, the level of equipment provided for in pocket parks is generally low, and as you can see here, they include a couple of benches and pieces of play equipment, as well as signage. In these examples, you can also see that landscaping and trees have been planted or retained. Next slide, please.
I'll just pause here to note that Councillor Herridge is online, so if you're not able to see this either on the hub or on the screen, Councillor Herridge will ensure that it's uploaded so you'll be able to access this resource. Please continue.
Thank you. Here are some examples of local parks in the city, and as you can see, these examples have more of a water-sensitive design and less irrigation, but still offer good amenity and functional, usable spaces. Local parks are generally 5,000 square metres to a hectare in size and can be similar to some pocket parks, but of a larger scale. Given this, they can include more equipment, such as additional benches, seating areas, pieces of play equipment, as well as picnic settings and bins. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. In this next slide, this next slide shows some examples of neighbourhood parks, including neighbourhood sports parks. These examples show a mixture of irrigated and water-sensitive designs. Neighbourhood parks can range from 1 to 7 hectares in size and can serve a recreational, sports and nature function. POS incorporating a single playing field is considered to be a neighbourhood sports park under our policy. The equipment provided at these parks is generally of a larger scale than local parks and again includes more seating, benches, pieces of play equipment and picnic settings, but they can also include a barbecue, drink fountain, bike racks and security lighting. Next slide, please. Thank you. The city's largest parks are our district and regional parks. District parks can range from 7 to 20 hectares and regional parks can range from 20 to over 50 hectares. District parks principally provide for organised sporting use, but they can also be large enough to accommodate other concurrent uses, such as children's play, social gatherings and individual activities. The allocation of equipment provided at district parks is again larger, and district parks can also provide fitness equipment, a basketball half court, goal posts, a cricket pitch, multi-purpose hard courts, toilets and change room facilities. And then finally, regional open spaces are the largest provision of space of POS in the city. These can be large-scale sporting complexes with multiple precincts, like the Kingsway Regional Sporting Complex, or a community destination that attracts a lot of visitors, like a regional beach node or a conservation precinct. Regional public open spaces are generally determined and managed by the state, including the provision of equipment provided in these places. So equipment is not included for regional open spaces is not included in our policy. Next slide, please. In terms of the policy, the Schedule 3 outlines the provision of equipment and assets that should be provided at each level of public open space. Whilst this may appear prescriptive, the intent is for the city to provide a reasonable level of equipment and assets at each level of park to strike a balance between the community's expectations and what can adequately be maintained by the city. Lists of acceptable standard requirements, such as those in our Schedule 3, are not uncommon for local governments in Perth, and some of the local governments which include similar lists in their POS policies are the Shire of Serpentine Jarrandale and the cities of Kalamunda and Swan. If Council would like, administration could amend the standard requirements in the policy Schedule 3. However, these may incur additional charges in upfront capital costs, ongoing operational costs and asset renewal costs. For example, the capital cost of installing the Jim Bup Swamp toilet block was over $317,000, and cleaning costs and maintenance costs for toilet facilities can exceed $10,000 a year. Barbecues can cost around $35,000 to install and around $600 per barbecue per year to clean, while picnic shelters can cost around $20,000 to install and drink fountains can cost around $15,000. Next slide, please. With the information presented to you, we are seeking your advice, Deputy Mayor and Council members, as to what matters administration should consider when undertaking its review of Local Planning Policy 4.3, Public Open Space. Thank you.
I feel like that's the most open-ended question of the night, so it could lead to some discussion on this matter. Councillors, once again, this is open to discussion, feedback and questions. There is no recommendation, so I open the floor to comments and questions. I'll go the Mayor first.
Thank you. I have a few concerns about the level of provision under this. Catalina Green, we opened Expedition Park in April this year. Fantastic park. It's a neighbourhood park. It has a play area, it has climbing frames, it has teenage climbing frames, it has an arbour where you can have weddings, it has barbecues, a great big open space that's like a lovely open recreation space that's paved. And we opened it, it cost millions and fantastic. And the comments I got on Facebook were, this park is amazing, my kids loved it, the grass area is huge and the playground suits all ages with a bike path all around. Went yesterday, but my bladder only lasted 2 hours and I heard lots of mums rushing their kids to the car because they needed the toilet. Heads up, a lot of construction still going on around the park with new house parking. It was crazy. And then Boyo, please tell me they have toilets. And this came up repeatedly. Absolutely fantastic, multi-million-dollar park opened. And by the way, it didn't have dog faeces bags either on the rubbish bin, just point that out there. And dogs were walking in the park, but there wasn't dog faeces bags or a provision for that as well. So when I put an inquiry in about why there wasn't a toilet there, and if you go to the Catalina estate and see that they all put together this absolutely fantastic Expedition Park, it's not a level of provision to put a toilet in, and it's not a level of provision for dog faeces bags. Now, I listened to what you said about neighbourhood recreation parks being between 1 and 7 hectares. This is not a 1 hectare park. It is a really, really flash park. It is a go-to park that families go to on holidays. School holidays, they go around to all the parks, take turns. They've got Shorehaven, they've got all the different parks they go to, and that provides a cost-efficient recreation for school holidays that the kids have adventures as they go to their different parks. This really flash park doesn't have a toilet. When I put an inquiry in as to why not, it's not the provision. We need to be able to provide in a neighbourhood park that is flash like this a toilet, particularly looking at the response. The people loved it. The response was great, but it had no toilets. And this is where we need to look at the appropriateness to supply toilets within these situations. Great parks, great for the community, go-to parks for people to travel around our city, but there's no toilets for our kids or our families. That's my comment. That's what I would like the provision for, and I would like you to look into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Other comments or questions on this item? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a few, but feel free to cut me off. considering I was the councillor that did bring this notice of motion on. I guess similar to Mayor Aitken's point, I think some of my concerns are around that local and neighbourhood level of parks. Obviously pocket parks with their size you can understand, and then obviously with the larger facilities there we do quite well at looking after them. But it's probably around that local to neighbourhood level, and I think the Mayor brings up an interesting point. Maybe it's the size of the park we need to relook at and rejig what the consideration is, because like you said, 7 hectares to a 1 hectare is quite a big difference, and again the changes in the reasoning is different of why people would use it. I guess some of the feedback that I had, so particularly one of them was around the irrigation side of things, and I understand through the administration that obviously there's the Nangara groundwater allocation plan and also the Northwest Corridor one, which eventually reduces it to, I think it's 6,750 gigalitres, I think, per hectare per year. However, is there an opportunity to strengthen this policy around more water-sensitive urban design at all levels? Because I know you mentioned mainly at that higher level, but in particular, I didn't see anything in there around stormwater harvesting, using recycled wastewater, using any aquifer recharges that occur. Like there's other ways to be able to irrigate parks other than pumping bore water out. So have we considered any of those sorts of things with irrigation of parks? I'm happy to just take that on notice or just as feedback. The other one that I had on there was incentivising developers for using alternative water sources from the get-go, and introducing some sort of sustainability or green score checklist, which I know some local governments do. So obviously putting in a percentage of site that's irrigated by alternative water sources, using hydro zoning, which I know we already do a lot of, bioretention swales and a couple of other things. So is there a standard checklist that we can look at including to basically incentivise more developers to go down that route? I had on... Would you
prefer that we
oh, yeah.
Would you, yeah. I might just pause there, given that there were 2 questions somewhat interrelated to each other, so I'll go and see if there's a response, Ms Pearce or Mr Wansborough.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Councillor. In relation to, I guess, the points around water-sensitive urban design, that's certainly business as usual. So that's something which we capture through another local planning policy, LPP 4.4, which is urban water management. That's due for review very soon, and we are waiting for the state planning policy 2.9 water resources, or water planning for water, sorry, to be released by the minister. That's set to occur very, very soon, so it's imminent. And then we'll review that LPP 4.4. So that will cover issues around alternative water supplies, irrigation. The policy will also, the local planning policy 4.4 will also capture water-sensitive design requirements, which is a general expectation in new subdivisions. Okay. In relation to looking at matters around recharge, that's generally captured through local structure plans or district structure plans. That broader approach to water management is generally considered at that stage. So we can certainly pick that up through other documentation. Okay.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I guess sort of the second, I guess, major bullet point was sort of shifting away from that prescriptive Schedule 3 and making it more of a place-based approach, because we seem to be moving in that direction for a lot of our other service unit areas. But again, just some things that I had picked up. So rather than having, 4 or 5 seats, having statements like sufficient seating shall be provided. So I guess the biggest frustration for us is when we do submit those requests, and they often get rejected because it doesn't meet the policy. And I've always seen it as if it's a valued space of the community, there's a lot more people using it. should we not be making sure that the standards in that reflects what the sentiments of the community are? Because even though the park may be smaller, it may, for whatever reason, a lot more people might use that park over another park, you know, but rather than trying to put all this money in a bigger park that nobody really wants to use for whatever reason, should that be something that we look at and having that place-based approach based on the impact we're going to be having on the community? So something around that sort of Schedule 3, if we can move away from being as prescriptive. And I understand why you've done it for the developer purposes, but maybe that might be a separate schedule we have just for developers for starting off, and then as it goes in and as it hands over to us, can we have a different set of schedule or something where it's as a on basis, or, you know, we require something in terms of a petition from community for it to be valid, or whatever it is there something of that approach we can look at doing for our care and maintenance parks?
Ms Pearce, Mr Wansborough.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Yes, that is something that we can certainly consider as we develop the policy. Yeah, most definitely.
Further questions? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. The last 2 points, I promise. The last 2 points that I had in there is the policy obviously defines nature play. However, there's no sort of follow through throughout the document in terms of incorporating, you know, your natural features like logs, rocks, off the shelf stuff that kids also consider as play equipment sometimes. So is that something that we can all more formalise in that sort of policy as well moving forward? And in saying that as well, smart parks is another one that's sort of grown a lot, and we've talked about it a lot in our smart city strategy. So things like, particularly at that neighbourhood level, things such as, I'm just trying to, it's disappeared now. I think there was solar powered lighting, phone charging stations, smart irrigation systems, some of those things. So can that also be provided in the policy as well? Because I guess as time moves on, a lot of people are expecting those smart features to be in parks now, particularly at that neighbourhood probably or above, just for that to be considered if possible.
Ms Pearce.
Thank you, through the Chair. Councillor Wright, yes, I think they're very good suggestions, and we'll make a note of all of those and we'll consider them in the review of the policy as well.
Further questions or comments? Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do have, I guess I'm going to do them as questions, and then you can either say, yeah, we'll take it on board, or give me an answer. But my first question to you is, on page 42 of the document, of the policy, it does make a mention that the policy should be read in conjunction with DPS 2 or 3 when it comes along. And obviously DPS 2 will always take precedence over the policy. Talking on what Councillor Wright and the Mayor just was also talking about, I find sometimes that is a bit of a conflict area. Is it possible that the policy could reflect where that information is? So either whether it's a developer or it's a mum and dad one looking at their park, because just saying DPS 2, that's a huge document for the average person to try and even get their head around. I'm just wondering if we can have some interaction between the two in that document.
Ms Pearce.
Through the Chair, yes, Councillor Miles, I think that's a very good suggestion, and we can reflect the most relevant information in the District Planning Scheme number 2 in the policy itself, rather than referring to the document more broadly.
Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. On page 43, under the general policy provisions, you say that public open space master plan. So you're saying in this document that all public open spaces do have a master plan. Are they on the website? Can people see those to what is supposed to be in that park under the master plan?
Mr Wansborough.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for the question. In relation to the master plans, my understanding is they're updated regularly as part of the subdivision process. They're not publicly available, from my understanding. No. So they're a document which the administration uses to get an understanding, I guess, of the broader public open space layout across the structure plan area. It also identifies, I guess, the level of provision in each of the different park hierarchies. And it allows us to have a look at that, I guess, broader layout and provision of amenity across I guess, the different structure plan areas.
So are they only of use to the developer and your team, or does Grant Chettleberg's team use them as well to maintain the park to the standard that was specified?
Mr Wansborough.
Thank you, Deputy Chair, and thank you, Councillor. My understanding is both service units in the city would utilise them. We primarily use it as a tool to work with the developer in terms of planning for public open space. Those documents would certainly be available to the Parks and Conservation team, so Grant Chettleberg and his officers can certainly utilise that to look at asset maintenance, renewals, and eventual replacement over the years.
Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you. Also on page 44, it says on here that the city is requesting a financial report from either the landowner or developer which determines the long-term financial assessment of each of those parks. Again, is that just done at the initial spray and then the document just falls away? Or is that then given to asset management and obviously our finance department, so we know as a council what we're up for under the replacement?
Mr Wansborough.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for the question. In relation to the financial assessment of public open space design, that data is collected by administration. It is used to assess I guess the financial costs of that park, the ongoing costs, and that is fed through to various other service units to look at the ongoing cost to council. It does feed into the asset plans, and that data is captured in I guess the maintenance budgets for those POSs.
Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you. Page 47. Mr Wansborough, under 5.2, it talks about the cash in lieu POS, and there's a trust fund for that cash in lieu. How much funding is in that cash in lieu trust fund at the moment?
Mr Wansborough.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor. I would have to take that question on notice. I don't have that figure before me.
Yeah, I don't know if even Ms Jennings would know the intricate detail of that particular trust fund. Ms Jennings, do you want to comment, or we'll just take it on notice?
Thank you. That's not one of the things I have in my mind at the moment. Sorry.
You do surprise me. Do surprise me. Councillor Miles, keep going.
Thank you. On page 51, obviously it talks about public open space, the design, what needs to be within that recreation area, whether it's nature, sport and the like, and we've seen some pictures obviously of previous parks. And I understand why the city has dropped out planting grass because of water use, but I also think grass is coming back into favour in the community. And whilst I understand grass may go a bit dormant during the real hot sessions of summer, can we actually look at maybe, because that's still a climate benefit, it's still, obviously doing the right thing in our environment. And I know that your team are trying to push for as much water-resistant planting as possible. But also I believe that grasses are getting better as well. I'm just trying to get a better outcome for our community that just want to have a kick around on a bit of grass that can't do that in our nature areas.
Mr Wansborough.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for the question. Grass does require irrigation. I guess there's an expectation of the community to have turf that is aesthetically pleasing and usable. There is the possibility to have, I guess, turfed areas that do brown off over summer. I guess the question would be how well does that come back during the winter period? Look, that's certainly something we could look at. If I guess brown parks and grass isn't being utilised, I think water sense urban design through the replacement with local native waterwise species probably provides a better visual amenity. Look, we can certainly take that on notice and look into that a bit more.
Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just finally on this particular one, Mr Wanneroo, Mandy, you'd be happy. But on page 58, there's a whole schedule of relevant policies, guidelines and other documents that this policy references. Now, that's a lot. And I think it was mentioned by Councillor Wright and the Mayor that, I think really we've got to try and bin some of these policies or whatever, because to me that is too much for people to have to read all of that to be part of this policy. I mean, I understand you might have some connection of policies, but maybe we should be looking at streamlining those policies. And I don't know what your team's doing in that regard, and I know you're very busy with obviously all the new work that's coming on as far as the growth areas, but I think we also need to start looking at culling some of these guidelines and other documents that are in our control, especially when it comes to this document referring to them. Have you got a plan in that space?
Mr Piggott has indicated he wishes to answer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rowe, and thank you, Councillor Miles, for that question. I may just foreshadow that a number of those documents on page 58 are policies or documents that were previously approved by council. So I'm mindful of the fact that it might not be appropriate for us to just delete them or bin them off when council resolutions apply in those regards.
And Ms Pearce or Mr Wanneroo, anything to add from yourself in relation to that question?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Miles. With our review, we can have a look at those items specifically, see if we could, bring in the more relevant aspects or update them, keeping in mind the comments that they are council adopted policies, but we can definitely look at them through the review of this LPP.
Councillor Miles.
If administration would like a notice of motion at our next council meeting to start streamlining these, I'm happy to present one. I guess I was asking administration if they would like to offer up to this council, we'd like you to change the pathways policy or the environment policy or local bio, whatever it may be. I understand that policies are approved by council, but it's very clear that this committee was set up purely to start streamlining some of our work rather than get stuff in an ad hoc manner. So I'm happy to do a notice of motion if that's what administration's asking, CEO, or whether you want to take it on board and then come back at a future policy committee.
You've asked so many questions, Councillor Miles, that the CEO wishes to answer one now. So, Mr Parker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was feeling a little bit left out in terms of the questions being asked. Look, Councillor Miles, I think you ask a valid question, and I guess from an administration perspective, I'd just like to, I guess, in terms of going through this particular policy review committee, I think the first question we should be asking ourselves when we present a policy to you guys is, do we need it? I think would be the first question. So I think we will take that on notice, each and every one of us, to sort of have that in the back of the minds when these review dates are coming up and we come to this committee, because the team's right. If something's been adopted by council administrative, we just can't strike it out. But our first pass should be, do we need this?
Councillor Miles.
Just one last final request of administration. This came in from Director Pickett this afternoon, page 3. This is with regard to having playground fencing for safety around children, and it obviously does state that we can put it in if we need to. I would agree that we need to, especially on some areas. So if I refer to Jim Bub Swamp playground. That playground was in 30 metres of Ashley Road, which is now, we've already had 2 children run over on that road. So whether there could be a methodology that if a road has certain amount of traffic or whatever, or it's a major distributor road like that one, Wanneroo Road to Pinjar Road, then any playground equipment that's parked too close to the road, then maybe we need to put some additional fencing in place. So I think that on page 3 of the director's notice, I would like to see that in the report, as well as some of those other items like the dog park waste facilities. I think we've gone over that before in this council. Be good to see that come back. Thank you.
Okay, noted, Ms Pearce. Further questions or comments? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some ideas, and I think to be able to make a proper decision later on, some of my requests will be about for further information, if that's possible. You mentioned provision of some other LGAs, but some smaller ones as well. So I was wondering, is there going to be a desktop analysis, a little bit of like LGAs to us, like Stirling or Joondalup, in terms of what they provide as well, just so we can get a sense of, yep.
Ms Pearce.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you for your question. Yes, we can certainly give you some more information about what other LGAs, how they do set out their local planning policies for public open spaces, and give you a little bit of an analysis of our perspective on that approach, the approaches that they take when we bring this item back for advertising.
Councillor Smith.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I've got quite a few. Page 46, it had the standard requirements, which are quite prescriptive there. Just one thought occurred to me. Do we have like dieback in our communities or anything like that? Do we need to provide some foot cleaning little stations and things like that? Would that be captured there, or is that automatically captured under something else?
Given that there'll be quite a few questions from elected members on this, I might just give the standing orders don't apply to this item. So the administration, please feel free to just answer the council member's question.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for the question. I'm not aware of that being, I guess, included in any policy as such, but look, we can certainly take that on notice and look into that for you.
Thank you. I'd love to get a little bit of more information about the pros and cons of sand or mulch in comparison to rubber. I've just been aware of a number of different instances of needles in sand pits and things like that. So just so I can make an informed decision later, if we can have that information there again. Thank you very much. You also mentioned a few of the costs of like a barbecue, picnic shelter and drink fountains. Could you tell me what the estimated cost of a single bin is, please? If you know off the top of your head. Thanks. I am quite keen to see a bin anywhere that there is any sort of play equipment or things like that, because even if there's not play equipment, people often walk through parks or they're walking their dog or things like that. So I'd just be interested to see the cost-benefit analysis to that, because you often do get rubbish in those small pocket parks as well. In similarity to what some of my fellow councillors have talked about in terms of a bit of greater flexibility and the placemaking approach, I really like that, because just looking at the pocket park description, it does say they may also serve valuable functions as community meeting places or places for relaxation. They may retain insignificant vegetation or cultural physical landmarks. So the ability there that it's optional, that they could have a drink fountain, or even for a local park, the option to have a barbecue. I think that provides greater flexibility, especially if our community members say that they use those parks quite well and they actually want to activate that in a greater way. I think that would be fantastic to see. I think one of my last points, play equipment listed on page 65. I know we've moved for some of our newer parks to be more inclusive, but if we can also see in any of the standard provisions, if we can be selective to look at what more inclusive equipment that we can include, that would be fantastic for our average parks as well, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's all my points. Thank you very much.
Okay, and we note that it will be taken on board, including the question around the cost of a single bin. I think that'll be good to get some clarity on that. Before I go back to Councillor Wright, I saw that Councillor Herridge had a question or questions, so I'll go to you first.
I do. I have three, if that's okay, Mayor, Deputy Mayor. Page 46, it has mentioned on, I think it is 3.3.3, a district sport POS is to be provided for every 2 government high schools. Is that still relevant to today? Knowing and going through our list, we have a lot of neighbourhood. We don't necessarily have a lot of district, and the way that the department do their planning, would this still be relevant for this policy?
Mr Wansborough or Ms Pears?
Thank you, Deputy, and thank you, Councillor Herridge. I will check some information around that question. I'll take that on notice and I'll provide you with a response following this meeting.
Councillor Herridge?
Cool. Thank you. I've had this conversation with Rowan a couple of times. I know we're reviewing the policy, but do we actually review what we have on ground with the hierarchy? Being that we have what is existing and then coming online, I do find there's quite a gap between them both. Looking at what we would call a neighbourhood park in my area, per se, to what we're putting on in the north, I just feel sometimes that there's a gap there somewhere, that we've got too much or not enough, that maybe we could actually add something into the hierarchy line, if that makes sense.
Mr Clem?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Yes, we do have some detail around that, and understanding of where each of our parks is at in relation to the policy, and we have some capital programs, capital budget programs that help us address shortfalls each year, and also deal with requests that come in that we, I guess, haven't planned for. I can try and get a summary of that information and have that included in further information that we circulate.
Might be just good to know. And last question, please, Deputy Mayor.
Yep.
I just thought, I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask, but just with the POS, with the 10%, I'm not sure if I quite understand how the 2 and the 8% work. So I believe that of that 10, 2% can be allowed for non-POS space. Is that correct, and how that works? Can we Jimmy that 2%, that it's got to be outside of that 10, so our community actually keep the 10%? I hope I've said that right.
You have. There's just a bit of hesitation as to who wants to answer it. Ms Pearce.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for the question. The 2% and the 8% relates to restricted and unrestricted public open space. So 20% of your 10% public open space can be restricted public open space, which is generally subject to floodwater or inundation during, storm events. Anything outside of that is considered unrestricted, and so I guess the amenity of that space is considered, I guess, unconstrained. So that's the reasoning for it. But I guess a developer is only required to provide that 10% of their gross subdivisible area as POS, And so that 2 and 8% that makes up the 10% POS is standard requirement. It's reflected in the various state government policies, and I think it's also reflected in our local planning policy as well. Okay.
Further questions? Back to Councillor Wright, and then I'll go over to...
Sorry, I just had one, Deputy Mayor. If it's possible, I know this is not a service review process as such, but the only reason why, and I think Councillor Smith touched on it before, if we can actually get some different alternative financial models around moving forward, around if we wanted to provide more or if we wanted to take less provision. The only reason why is because the council plan actually prioritises, or the new version actually prioritises open spaces. So naturally my thinking has now shifted. This is an area we need to put more money in and take money off other areas. So if we can be provided with some more modelling around that when the new policy comes back, so we do have an A, B and C option that we can choose around how much provisioning we should be putting into public open space.
That's been noted. Councillor Wright. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Chair. When I look at the policy, I see sport catered for, kids catered for, I see dogs catered for. But what I don't see, and I think is something that we should probably include in the policy, because I think for developers it's something that some developers are forward thinking and they're inspirational in their design, but a lot of them will only build basically what's sitting in our policy. So we don't add in here any sort of trim trail. We don't cater for the teenagers who just need to let go of some energy, and we don't cater for the elderly who just want to walk around a park but improve their balance, or balance is a huge thing, and we could do that in our parks very easily. So it would be nice to actually really start to think of, when we talk about nature play for kids, to start thinking about woodland trim trails for teenagers and adults. So a woodland trail, fitness trails, things like balancing, jumping, getting even across, just something else for our juniors, our seniors, and also for our elderly side. We could put that in under seniors, and then a standard walk trail, so that we really cater for not just specific age groups, but actually involve all the community, which I don't think we do in our parks at the moment. So trim trails, I think, are really important that we get in, and there is nothing in here about trim trails whatsoever. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Those points have been taken on board. Councillor Miles.
Just one final I just thought of then while Councillor Huntley was talking. With East Wanneroo coming online and we've got those new environmental linkages, will they come under this policy?
Ms Pearce or Mr Wansborough?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Miles. Yes, the planning for East Wanneroo will comply with the policy. Correct, so the environmental links will comply with the policy, so yes.
Further questions or comments in regards to this item? All of Councillor Koutsias have been asked. There's been a lot of good discussion. If there's no further discussion on the item, I'll just make 3 quick points. They're more thought bubbles than anything else. The 3 words that I wrote down were balance, equity and flexibility. So balance, and I think this captures much of the discussion that's already had. Public open space needs to be there for both sport and recreation, and then also passive leisure, and a good balance between the two needs to be consistent across our public open space. The second is equity. That as new parks and facilities come on board, it should not deny existing and more established facilities the right to have service provision that is up to scratch to those communities as well, even if they were not installed and paid for partially by developer contributions. And the third point is around flexibility. And I think the Mayor articulated it well at the beginning. You don't want to see a policy used in a rigid fashion to be able to deny a park basic infrastructure, whether it be seating, shade, water. Those are basic provisions, and it shouldn't really take a petition by residents to come to council for the administration to tell us no because of LPP 4.3 and us to then overturn the recommendation in a sign of solidarity with the community. That shouldn't be the process. That should need to be followed for something so basic. In terms of flexibility, I also think the administration, when requests come in, should have broader discussions across the organisation. So if, for instance, a park is classified as district, but a residential estate has recently been developed in a neighbouring couple of streets, so there's an additional 200 households in the area, you would assume that then participation in or usage of that park is going to increase because there's more homes online. And so I think there needs to be those broader discussions of knowing a number of factors should influence provision of service, not merely just what's in a document that may have been last reviewed some years ago. So balance, equity and flexibility from me. Any final points? Otherwise, we will close the workshop portion of the meeting. Okay, so we close that section of the meeting, and therefore I'm going to ask for a mover for a procedural motion to resume Standing Order 5.8, limitation on members' speaking time, so we can deal with the other 3 items that are left on the agenda. Can I have a mover for that procedural? Councillor Berry to move, Councillor Seif to second. When the vote appears on our screen for that procedural motion, please cast your vote. And Councillor Herridge will just need some indication from you. Thank you. That's 4. Therefore, we declare that carried unanimously, 10 votes, 9 in the room, 1 online. Okay. So, with the resumption of standing orders, I believe we have 3 items left on the agenda, they being 4.5, Sports Floodlighting Policy, 4.8, Ordinary Council Meeting and Forum of Council Policy, and 4.10, Chief Executive Officer Performance Review Policy. I just recommend that we deal with them now sequentially. So item 4.5, Sports Floodlighting Policy. This falls within the Directorate of Community and Place. Ms Callan or Mr Clem? Mr Clem, any introductory remarks from yourself?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillors, the policy you have before you is our sports floodlighting policy. The review we've undertaken is only minor, and the proposed changes include minor administrative matters and updating things to the current policy template. And we have removed a table which talks about the sport-specific lighting levels, which are already referenced and stated in the Australian standards. We did receive a question from Councillor Wright in regards to this, and Councillor Wright noted that the Australian standards they're a purchased thing, so they're not generally available in their full detail for members of the community. The Australian standards are quite detailed, specific documents, and they're not, I guess, necessarily of a high level of value for the average community person who may just want to look up some floodlighting information. That information is generally available just through other searching on the website or through state sporting associations, or even by contacting our officers, who are always happy to help. So at this point in time, we'd probably still leave that table out of the policy, Councillor Wright, but happy to reconsider that if there's support from other councillors to re-include the table. Happy to take any questions, Deputy Mayor.
And the only reason I didn't include this in the en bloc is because I thought there may be some discussion, given it had sports floodlighting in the title. It's a popular topic among elected members. Councillor Miles.
Yeah. Thank you. Just a real quick one for Mr Clem. On page 104, in the second table, it still does list that we're going to, for neighbourhood parks, put 50 lux lighting in place. Bearing in mind we were just discussing neighbourhood parks, local parks and that with our planning team, I'm just concerned that 50 lux is still a bit underdone, and is it possible that we could just do the 100 but have the capacity to do the half power when the facility is not being used? Because technology's changed substantially over the last 4 or 5 years.
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Miles, for the question. I think the policy, the table you're looking at is in the current policy, and we are actually recommending to change that in the new policy. So the table in the new policy, and I'm looking at page 112, So for neighbourhood, the level of lighting would be maximum of 100 lux. So we are going to 100 lux, maximum of 100 lux, Councillor Miles.
See, very quick response, Mr Clem, that's good.
Councillor Seif.
Not to be pedantic, but it says maximum of 100 lux, and the page 104 says minimum of 50 lux. So are we saying it will be a minimum of 100 lux on page 112?
Mr Clem.
No, so what we're saying is it would go to a maximum of 100 lux, so we wouldn't go above 100 lux for that neighbourhood park.
Councillor Seif.
My understanding from what Councillor Miles was saying was that he wanted a minimum of 100 lux.
Mr Clem.
If that's feedback from council, they would like that to read as minimum of 100 lux, then that's a change we could make.
Mayor.
In going to minimum of 100 lux, could you advise what the cost would be for us to go higher? Because if we put that as the minimum, then we decide to go for 150, that's an extra 50 lux and that. So we need to know the cost to have that available as well. And I also note that the district has a maximum of 100 lux, not a minimum of 100 lux as well. But there will always be a cost to budget if we decide as council to be able to go above 100 lux as well. So if you look at the second item, district, on page 112, it says maximum of 100 lux. If we're going to go in the same, that should be minimum. We can't have the amateur neighbourhood parks at a minimum and then turn around and have the district at a maximum. That has to be minimum as well, if that's what Councillor Miles wants.
So the question, Mayor, was around the cost of
But the question is the cost and the extra cost to go higher as well, because that would need to be considered as well.
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and thanks, Mayor, for the question. I don't have specific costing information with me, but obviously as we increase in lux level, the costs do increase. Generally, if we go above 100 lux, it would be to a level that aligns with some higher Australian standard that is in line with the requirements of a particular sport. And there's future considerations, there's future information in the policy that talks about, and I'm just looking for the page number, page 115, which talks about additional levels of sports floodlighting and circumstances regarding that. Just to, I guess, clarify, 100 lux is chosen because, and we're looking at large ball sports, that's the section that it's talking about on page 112, and that's football or codes, because that supports that level of training and competition that the vast majority of our clubs require as part of the competition that they're participating in. And that's why that level of lighting is 100 lux as referenced in that table on 112.
I'll just go Councillor Herridge first and then go back to the room.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. It was on the same question. I just wanted to check. I believe from memory there is somewhere, possibly even this policy, that the maximum of 100 lux is due to also the amount of the community that's close by because of the buffer. So it's actually the spread of the lights that's further out that needs to be concerned about, as well as what sport's being played.
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Herridge. There is a part of the Australian standards that talks about spill of light, and when a particular floodlighting project is designed, it needs to consider the general lighting level requirements for playing of the sport, but also the amount of spill into neighbouring areas. So there is actually an Australian standard, Councillor Herridge, that does that designers do need to ensure that when a floodlighting project is designed, that they do need to adhere to that particular standard. To my knowledge, it's not necessarily directly linked to that 100 lux level. That standard does apply regardless of the level of floodlighting.
Councillor Miles, then Councillor Smith, then Councillor Wright.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think technically, whoever's doing the design for the lighting, they will make sure it doesn't spill into neighbouring properties. But if you have a look on page 123, where it lists all the classification of parks, you've got a neighbourhood park in Mindarie, which is Aberville Park, that has 100 lux. But Addison Park only has 50. Yeah, Addison Park, whilst it's classified as a neighbourhood park, I think it's actually bigger in size and it's probably further away from residents. I just feel as a council we need to make the best use of all of our ovals, and if it means upgrading or having a minimum standard and we progressively move towards that standard, I think we will then be able to share parks better with some of those sports that need to do them. I don't know if you agree with that, Mr Clem, but I'm not saying that we as a council would go out and do all these parks within the next couple of years. They would have to be done as and when they get replaced. There's a lot of metal halide lighting still out there. We probably shouldn't be having that in this day and age. LED is where we should be going, and we should be upgrading those in a quicker time. But if you put in 100 LED, my comment, Deputy Mayor, was if you put in 100 lux, it doesn't have to be on 100 lux all the time. You can set them that they will come on at 50, and only if there's a game on or some cricket or something like that, that you can tweak them up to the 100. So that's my take on it, Mr Clem.
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and I think administration supports that position, and happy to change that word of maximum to minimum. Whatever the prior question was, Councillor Miles, happy to change that wording in the policy.
So before I go to you, Councillor Smith, I'll just note at this stage, councillors, that the administration has indicated the change to the report. Therefore, at this stage, no amendment has been tabled, nor is it needed unless another item wishes to be amended. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I just was seeking clarity about that because the recommendation doesn't have anything to say about that. And at this point, while I like and agree with the desire for upgraded lighting, I think like Merrick I'm a bit hesitant because I don't have all the cost implications before me to understand, and having the principle of fair and equity across the city and things like that. I don't know if I have enough information to be able to support that at this time, but it seems like it's already been changed in the admin report. I'm just unfamiliar with that working on the fly with the admin report changing right in front of you, if that makes sense.
So the administration has said that they can factor it into the policy as is. I would note that our substantive has yet to be moved or seconded. So the way that these discussions at Policy Committee we're trying to do is to have a lot of the discussion and the questions first, and then we ultimately get to the recommendation that is put forward by Council. So if your opinion at this stage is that you're uncomfortable with that, we note it, and then once we get to the substantive, we can deal with it accordingly. Okay. Councillor Kutsia.
Thank you. I am going to ask a question about Splendid Park. If you would like me to take that offline or other, I can do that later as well. So I'll ask the question and then you tell me.
You made the effort to be here tonight. I want you to ask the question, Councillor Kutsia.
Okay. About 2 years ago, we had a discussion in the chambers here. It was when Councillor Natalie Sangali was present here still, about a sports club from Splendid Park who was after higher lux. I was under the impression that it was done, but I see now that the Splendid Park is still under only 100 lux. Wasn't there a grant or anything involved in that or so?
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Coetzee. So previously Splendid Park had only been installed to 50 lux, which at the time was understood to be sufficient for supporting training for larger ball sports, AFL and the like. Through a CSRFF grant, the city was able to obtain funding to upgrade the floodlighting to 100 lux. So its current floodlighting level is 100 lux, which means it is sufficient to support competition, so nighttime play for AFL and other large ball sports such as soccer and rugby and the like.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I did have two questions on this one. I guess the first one was, I believe the Acting Director, Ms Callan, had popped in the responses that the table could be re-included in the policy. Is that something that we can do due to make it easier for community to access that particular information?
Mr Clem.
So that's the existing table, Councillor Wright, that's in the policy. If councillors would like to include that, then that is something we can include. We had removed it just for, I guess, to simplify the policy and to also, I guess, avert the issue where maybe the Australian standards are updated or changed in between the periods of time that we review the policy. So then there would be inconsistency between that table and what's in the Australian standards. However, if that's something council would like to see back in the policy, then we can put that table back in.
Councillor Wright.
Just a supplementary on that, I guess, wouldn't it be, I guess, good governance if any of the standards do change, that automatically triggers an update for this report, so then we are keeping contemporary and up to date with any changes and what those cost implications are. So having it in the actual policy then prompts administration to bring a review to us. Is that something, I guess, that administration can take into consideration?
Mr Clem.
Yes, that's right. Certainly we would, as soon as we pick up that discrepancy, then we would look to bring the policy back to council for reconsideration, noting there's usually a lag time involved with that.
Yep.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr Clem. Just my last question. I'm not sure how up-to-date your list is in attachment 4, but just looking, if I was just looking at the central wards being the central and central east combined together, I note we only have one venue in the whole entire, I think there's about, maybe 10, 15 suburbs between the two of us, and only one of them has 100 lux. So if that venue becomes unavailable, we have no other facility that's available to relocate clubs to that can play at games 100 lux or more. So is there any contingency planning in place, and what are the current procedures for administration in regards to prioritising new upgrades of floodlighting?
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Wright. Yes, we have been doing some work on prioritisation of floodlights, and we will be looking at updating we're updating the draft long-term financial plan now to consider that reprioritisation of projects, so that we do, I guess, put a bit more emphasis on trying to get more of our floodlit parks and high-use parks up to an appropriate Australian standard of 100 lux.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. My question is just about what administration thinks the urgency of this policy being decided tonight is in case there was a deferment to or a procedural to be able to gain more information about the costs of some of those proposed changes.
Mr Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Smith. The policy is due for its next review by July 2025, so it is due at this point in time, hence our decision to bring it before Council tonight.
So in conferring with General Counsel, I feel that the best way to handle this is, even though administration has said that they'd feel comfortable including the change through the report, the best thing to do would be to move and second the substantive and then deal with it as a councillor-led amendment. It's an amendment, not an alternative, so it will be dealt with as a vote first. That being said, are there any further questions on the item? Ms Callan?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And please correct me if I'm wrong in sort of making this comment, but just in regards to the minimum and maximums that we were talking about, for us, I think for administration, that was a way for us to prioritise to an extent and tier lighting in these parks. And if we're now suggesting that they all go to a minimum of 100 lux, we're adopting quite a flat structure to all of these places with lights. So just in regards to Council's consideration around where we're prioritising lighting and what for, there's probably just broader implications with introducing that flat structure around the lux for the different parks. So, thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Miles?
Yeah, just briefly. Whilst this is a policy that council would adopt, it doesn't say in the policy that council would go out and replace all this lighting within the next couple of years. It'd still be done as and when required, as per upgrades in parks, and as they are currently dealt with by administration. We're just saying that when we do these parks, we want this standard to be set at a minimum. Would the administration through the CEO or Mr Clem agree that that's what the policy is saying? We're not actually adding anything further into our costs. We're just saying this is our minimum standards when we do any upgrades.
Mr Clem?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Miles. I think that's a fair summary of it, that we would still have a planned approach to how we upgrade or install new floodlights across all of our active sporting spaces.
Councillor Smith?
Just to clarify in my head, so is it administration's position that we are moving away from 50 lux everywhere, and everywhere at some point will become 100 lux as a base? Is that where the administration saw we were heading anyway?
Mr Clem?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Smith. What we're finding is that 50 lux only supports training. It doesn't support competition play, and the ability for our clubs to be able to fixture and plan their competitions, their games around both nighttime and daytime participation is important. It also helps the city in terms of spreading, in some cases, wear and tear. If we've got more of the active sporting spaces that are able to support nighttime competition. So on that basis, I think it's reasonable for the city to consider that where it is looking to either upgrade existing floodlights or install new floodlights, that 100 lux is the minimum.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you. I tried to confirm what I thought I saw earlier this week, announcement by the state government, I think, that was increasing the funding to floodlights because of more the greater participation of women's sports and demand on fields. Does that ring a bell? If anybody else heard that this week, and I'm just wondering if that has any implications on us in greater funding being available for us as well. Thanks.
Mr Clem?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Smith. I'm not aware, I haven't seen anything myself, doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but I'm not aware of any additional funding be announced for the Club Night Lights program, which is the standard funding program that the city puts its applications in for and support for with external funding for floodlight upgrades. There was recently the state government's announcement about the number of projects they're intending to support and deliver by 2030. I think it's 2030 projects by 2030. How much of that relates to floodlights and floodlight funding, I'm not sure.
Mr Clem, I'll just build on the councillor's question. I believe it was around the delivery of election commitments that were in the space of sport and recreation. However, it was packaged as an announcement for how more projects could be supported, particularly around asset renewal and asset construction into the future. So I think it was around election commitment delivery because there was a large-scale sport infrastructure package. However, it was intended that there may be some expanded scope. So I believe that's what the council is referring to. I don't believe it was specifically related to the Club Nights program, but I can be proven wrong. Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm happy to move this item. It is a policy. It's not an application for funding or anything. So I'm happy with the way it's discussed. I'm happy with the small change that administration is going to take on board. I would ask, though, Deputy Mayor, does the General Council like a tweak to the recommendation to encourage that, or are they happy to leave as is?
I'll let the General Council answer, but the direction that I am, the instruction that I've been given is that, and yes, I do see a question from yourself, Councillor Herridge. The instruction I'm being given is that what the preferred approach is we would move and second the substantive, and then Councillor Miles, if you want to move this as an amendment, we would deal with it first. It's not an alternative, it's an amendment. So therefore we would deal with it first before any other vote. Councillor Herridge, question from yourself and then we'll progress towards the recommendation.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Just a quick one. On that same table that we're looking at 1112, have we been remiss in looking at the district if we're changing the neighbourhood down to a minimum of 100 lux? What's the difference for the district to then remain at a maximum of 100? When it's the same clubs utilising those parks,
Mr. Clem.
just different sizes.
Mr. Clem.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Herridge. I think it would be prudent for council if they're looking to change the wording for the neighbourhood category, then it should apply to the district category as well.
Therefore, may I request a mover and a seconder for the substantive that is on page 102, noting there's been a foreshadowed amendment for the substantive. Are you wanting to move an amendment? You can. Okay, you can. Off you go. Do you have a seconder? Mayor Aitken. Okay.
So I would just need some support from administration as what to add in there, but on under 6 of the policy, it states the neighbourhood area, which says a maximum of 100 lux, to be a minimum of 100 lux.
So I can read out what
Yes.
the administration has written and then you can confirm if
Agree.
it's acceptable. So that Policy Review Committee approves the sports floodlighting policy, attachment 3, as amended to include 1, reinstate table on page 2, 2, amend table on page 3, amend the level of lighting to a minimum of 100 lux for neighbourhood, district and regional. Yep, okay.
Happy with that, thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I don't need to further discuss it.
Mayor Aitken, any comments from yourself as the seconder? No, okay. Anyone wishing to speak against the recommendation? No, therefore, Councillor Miles, you don't need to close debate. Okay, so we'll be voting on the recommendation which has been incorporated into the substantive. I believe, Councillor Herridge, you heard us reading that, so you're all good. So when it appears on the screen, can you please just vote? We're just waiting for it to appear on the screen, Councillor Herridge. Yeah, we We're just going to allow the change to be brought to council services so they can display it on the screen. So I believe it is now on the screen, so it would just be a matter of requesting the vote electronically. Therefore, council members, please cast your vote. Councillor Herridge has already indicated support through her green sign there, and we've lost. Councillor Huntley's not in the room, so it's therefore declared carried unanimously. At this point in time, I'm going to request an adjournment for 5 minutes to be able to have a short break. So, do I need a vote on that? I think I might ask for a motion for adjournment for 5 minutes. Councillor Wright moved, Councillor Berry second. So it'll be a procedural motion for adjournment for a period of 5 minutes. Could we request a vote on that? Thank you. So council members, please cast your vote on an adjournment for 5 minutes. Declare that carried unanimously. We will reopen the meeting at 8:05 p.m. Okay, council members, we'll just ask to regroup. That on-air signal is going to come on in a second. Councillor Herridge, just give us a thumbs up if you can still hear us. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Nat Herridge? No. That doesn't look good. Okay, we'll resume the meeting proper at 8:08 p.m. Councillor Herridge, can you indicate if you can hear us? Can you hear us, Councillor Herridge? We might just get someone from the administration to contact the councillor. She may have us on mute. Can you hear us, Councillor Herridge? Yes, good, good, good. Okay, we move back to the agenda proper. We have 2 items left. We now progress to item 4.8, Ordinary Council Meeting and Forums of Council Policy. There were 2 foreshadowed amendments. Both have been withdrawn after further consultation. So before I get to the recommendation, which is on, I'll get the page in a second. Can I ask if there's any questions from council members on this item? Oh, I should have given Ms Coles the opportunity to introduce, given she's prepared. Ms Coles.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So the policy has been updated to reflect recent changes to the Policy Review Committee's terms of reference, which were adopted by Council at its March 2025 meeting. Specifically, the revised terms of reference now require that all policy reviews must be submitted to the Policy Review Committee for consideration, unless the policy requires an absolute majority decision of Council or is a newly proposed policy. So it's important to note that this is a minor legislative review only and does not alter the schedule review date of the policy, which remains set for November 2025. The purpose of this interim update is solely to bring the policy in alignment with the amended terms of reference adopted by Council. So the comprehensive 12-month review of the policy, as previously agreed, is scheduled to commence in July-August. This review will include engagement and surveying of key stakeholders to gather feedback and assess the effectiveness of the policy. The outcomes of this engagement will then inform workshop discussions with Council, ensuring a collaborative and informed approach to any substantive changes proposed as part of the scheduled review.
Thank you, Ms Coles. Are there any questions on the item before we go to the recommendation? Councillor Herridge.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Can Ms Coles just reiterate or confirm, did she say that we're doing the review next June, July?
Ms Coles.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Chair. It's commencing this July, August 2025. So we're starting it now.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions, council members? No. The recommendation is on page 151 of your agenda proper. Can I please seek a mover and a seconder? The Mayor will move. Councillor Seif will second. Mayor, any comments from yourself? No. Councillor Seif? No. Does anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Not indicated. Mayor, do you need to close debate? No. Therefore, we'll ask for a vote on the substantive recommendation, please. Please cast your votes when it comes on the screen. Councillor Herridge has indicated support, therefore that is carried unanimously, noting we still don't have Councillor Huntley. So that brings us to item 4.10, Chief Executive Officer Performance Review Policy. I'm going to go to Ms Coles for some introductory remarks first.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So under the Local Government Act 1995, Council is responsible for the employment of the Chief Executive Officer to manage the functions and operation of the local government. The Local Government Administration Regulations 1996 set out the minimum standards for CEO performance reviews. As a council, there's an obligation to ensure that the performance review of the CEO has been carried out in accordance with the standards. So this policy was due for review by July 2025, and following a review, the administration is proposing minor amendments to the policy as follows: a change of the responsible service unit to legal and governance to reflect the restructure of that service unit, and a change of title of the responsible officer to general counsel. So I just also want to raise with Council, with the committee tonight, that if you are going to have more detailed discussions in relation to the CEO's performance review, you should probably consider closing the meeting under section 5.232A of the Local Government Act, because this is a matter that affects an employee, and you are also obliged under the employment laws to obviously make sure that you abide by those as well. So that's just letting you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Coles. So what I'd like to reiterate from what General Counsel has said is, when I open the floor for questions, if it relates to the agenda proper and the policy, it would be appropriate to ask it in this domain. However, if we need to ask any more detailed questions as to what's been alluded to, I may seek a mover and a seconder for a procedural motion to close the doors. So are there any questions that relate to the material that's been provided that can be asked in this open session? Okay, does any other council member wish to make a comment as to the substantive before we get to that recommendation? None is being indicated. So therefore, what I'm going to do is request a mover and a seconder for the substantive item, which is Mayor Aitken moving and Councillor Seif will second. Mayor Aitken, comments from yourself as the mover of this item.
Thank you. We have fulfilled the requirements of the model standards with what we've done, and we've ensured that the principles have been followed. We've used an independent person to help with the KPIs, and it was facilitated with good results. So therefore, councillors, I ask that you support attachment 4 in this and support the updates to this policy. Thank you.
Councillor Seif? No? Okay. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the substantive recommendation? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chair, sorry. Just in regards to this particular item, and I thank the Mayor for the comments as well. Absolutely, the process has served us well for the number of years. However, I would like us to have a more contemporary structure in place moving forward that sort of aligns with what's happening in the sector. So I won't be supporting this and will be encouraging those to support the alternative. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
So I'll just indicate that you have foreshadowed an alternative that has been circulated. Okay. Is anyone wishing to speak in favour of the substantive recommendation? No? Mayor, I'll give you the opportunity to close debate on the substantive.
Thank you. I believe that we should support this policy, and then if we want substantive changes to the CEO policy, that should be done through a forum in the back room, and it would be perfectly fine for councillors to fill out a form requesting that it be brought to a forum and discussed there, instead of having an alternative that is being brought to us that we've only seen for about 12 hours and hasn't been fully examined or discussed between councillors. So therefore, I believe it's appropriate that we support this policy as it is, and then any alterations we look to do that we can do in a concept forum, and then bring that to council after it's been discussed through a concept forum with full information. Thank you.
And with that, Mayor Aitken has closed debate on the substantive, so I'm going to request that the administration puts forward the recommendation on page 204 for a vote. Once it appears on our screen, I'll ask that you cast your vote on the substantive, and Councillor Herridge will need indication from you when the time comes. So it's a vote on the substantive. Please cast your votes. No, at the... I declare that lost. That is 2 votes in favour, 6 against. The 2 votes in favour being Councillor Seif and Mayor Aitken. Votes against being myself, Councillor Wright, Councillor Miles, Councillor Berry, Councillor Smith, Councillor Coetzee and Councillor Herridge. So that would have been 2-7, in fact, with Councillor Herridge online. Okay, Councillor Wright, you wish to move an alternative recommendation.
Thank you, Chair, and Councillor Miles will be seconding that
Noted.
alternative.
Thank you.
Oh, would you like me to speak? Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Look, thank you, councillors, for the opportunity, and I do understand that if any discussions around the CEO do need to go behind closed doors, so I will keep my comments very general. However, I have circulated evidence through that. The only as moved as amended, the only change that I need to make to the report was the administration's comment for clause number C, which there was a particular line in there that excluded the mayor from being appointed as the presiding member. I will remove that as the mover, as it is not compliant with legislation, and I accept that from the administration. So I'm not sure if Councillor Miles is happy with that change. So essentially, yeah, just moving towards what good practice is in the sector. I've tried to take a little bit of research from all the other councils out there and what they do, and sort of do a nice blend of some good governance approaches in there. So obviously the things that are above what the model standards is, things that half of the committee should have at least some sort of formal training from any registered training provider or organisation out there that offers that. Things in there such as ad hoc performance reviews, which is currently given to us through legislation anyway, and also having another point of contact being the presiding member to meet with the CEO on a quarterly basis. So having 2 dialogues there, one from the mayor with the relationship with the CEO, as well as the presiding member. I think it's another accountable and another measure on top to be able to have that feedback coming through both ways. The only other changes is obviously the biggest one, which is moving to a committee structure. Obviously this alternative doesn't commit to actually setting that up right now, because we need to go through the terms of reference process and appointing the members. So I believe that addresses the first point in the administration's comment, that will have to come back to full council to be able to make that decision. The only part would be clause 16, which is of the model standards. I'm not sure if the CEO wants to add any comments or views to that point, considering that was raised from the administration that the CEO was not consulted as part of this process. However, the remaining points I would need to address in confidential session if council members would like to go down that route. However, I'll keep my comments there, Chair. Thank you.
So I will give the administration the chance to respond, given that you've suggested there will be a withdrawal of one element of the alternative proposal. But first I go to Councillor Miles as the seconder.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, I am quite happy with the proposed alternate recommendation. I think we all, at the last review through that process, we all felt that review was somewhat cumbersome. It wasn't as equally flowing as I've done in another organisation, and I think setting the setting up the recruitment and performance policy to then lead on to a new committee to help the CEO obviously deal with the seven members proposed of council and deal with it in that format, as well as those members, at least half of those members, needing to have some level of training either by WALGA or some other professional organisation. I think it's important for councillors to understand where that level of commitment should be. And I don't have any problem with that. So with that, I think Councillor Wright's articulated exactly what we want. I just want to say then, Deputy Mayor, that obviously C being removed, D becomes C. If that's what administration's going to put up on the board, then I'm happy with that change as well. Thank you.
So before I ask for speakers against the alternative recommendation, I'll go to Ms Coles and then ultimately to the CEO if they wish to make any comments in response.
Thank you, and through the chair. I'm not able to give you my full advice because we are in open session, but I can let you know that certain things with it that are proposed in the policy are inconsistent with the CEO's contract of employment, and the contract of employment is clear that it states that where there's a policy inconsistency, the contract prevails. So we do need to have a discussion about what you want to do and how we can do that, but in the current form, it's not possible.
So the administration has indicated that there is some information they wish to share that cannot be done in public session. And I believe if it's relevant to the decision-making process, the correct thing to do would be to request to close the doors at this stage for that discussion to occur. And can I seek a mover and a seconder for that procedural motion? Mayor Aitken to move, Councillor Berry to second. It's a procedural motion, so there's no vote, no debate on the matter. Can I ask for a vote on whether to close the doors? Please indicate your vote. And that is passed unanimously. What we'll need to now do is go off air. We'll need to close the doors, and in terms of the staff attendance, anyone who's not able to be present for those discussions Councillors, we're just going to wait to return on air. I'll read aloud that recommendation and then we'll close the meeting. Councillors, in relation to item 410, Chief Executive Officer Performance Review Policy, I confirm that a procedural motion was moved behind closed doors to defer to a special policy review committee meeting for workshopping purposes on Monday the 14th of July, and that was carried unanimously. Item 5, confidential, there is nil. Item 6, late reports to be circulated under separate cover, there are nil. Date of the next meeting. The next standard meeting, the next ordinary meeting of this committee will be Monday the 18th of August. However, we now note that the special policy review committee meeting will be Monday the 14th of July. There being no further business, we declare the committee meeting closed at 8:53 p.m. Thank you for attending.